You're listening to the Modern People Leader podcast, where we go behind the scenes with today's top HR leaders and work experts. We talk to them about how they've gotten to where they're at, what they do every day, and what they see coming next for the future of work. Hope you enjoy. What's up, guys?
Sup?
Hey, y'all.
We made it to Thursday.
We
What a
love
week.
Thursday.
Yeah.
What a week. Oh my gosh. I actually think Thursday's my favorite day because we go into the office on Friday and my CEO better not be listening to this. I am wildly unproductive in the office. And I swan around.
It's fun time.
I drink cold brew. I have convos. I mean, it's all pointing towards the strategy, but yeah, Friday is a very fun day. I love hanging out with my team. So Thursday to me feels like it's like mini weekend Friday.
I just said this to someone in
Yesterday.
Austin. In Austin, Thursday's a new Friday because I swear nobody works on Friday in Austin, Texas.
I'm getting flashbacks to our Workify days when we officed out of Headsprings office, and we'd all look forward to the free lunch, and then around 3:30 or 4, we would get the little hoop out.
We would shoot baskets. Wow.
Yeah.
Blast from the past.
All right, so let's do good news stories. And I'm going to pick on Steven.
I'm coming in hot because I have positive sports results in my life. I'm one of those, I love sports, but I am one of those cursed fans that somehow ended up supporting all the once great teams that are now shitty, like the University of Texas Longhorns. I guess we're better. We've been better.
Hey, we're back.
The Dallas Cowboys, who are like the laughingstock of the NFL. The Dallas Mavericks, who just traded away the player of the century to the LA Lakers, and Tottenham Hotspurs, also known as Spurs. We are doing terribly in the league, but today we were victorious. We won. And we're now in the semifinal of the Europa Conference, which is a European tournament for those that don't watch soccer. It's a big deal.
Wow.
Yeah, good. Go Spurs. Do they say go Spurs go too, or is that the San Antonio Spurs?
They say, come on, you Spurs, because that's more British.
Come on,
you Spurs.
That's awesome.
My gosh. As a still in my heart Londoner who lived very close to Tottenham for 10 years, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, but I'm really happy for you.
I thought you were going to say you're an Arsenal fan, and I was like, oh, no, now I have beef with Jesse.
No.
But okay, good.
No. I lived in Stoke Newington for 10 years, which is like kind of one borough, more or less, away from Tottenham.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm going to say I kind of avoided the pubs during those periods of times. Yeah.
Someday when my daughter is an adult, she'll tell you a story about us going to White Hart Lane on her 14th birthday. And it was a whole thing. Yeah. And there was like a fracas. I was involved. It was a thing. But that's another podcast, another story.
that's the football podcast we're planning, by the way, guys.
Oh, genius.
And so what's your good news, Jesse? We've had a lot of chief people officers come onto the show. And if there's one thing that they have in common, it's that they run their org their way. I think of people like Crystal Boyson at Sprout Social, who completely rethought performance reviews for her company, ditched long-form questions, created 3 clear ratings, which they then can auto-calculate into a final rating. I think of Carmel Galvin from Klaviyo, who ditched the generic way of measuring quality of hire and built a custom framework tailored to each team. I think of Jessica Zwaan, who tracks LTV to ECAC to evaluate every single manager. These are the exact kinds of people leaders who wish they had a tool like ChartHop. And for those of you who aren't familiar with ChartHop, ChartHop is a flexible PeopleOps platform and HRIS that brings in all of your people and business data into one place. So think, HRIS plus having the ability to bring in data from places like Salesforce. And they let you customize key processes like headcount planning, compensation, performance, and engagement exactly the way that you want it. No rigid templates, no one-size-fits-all playbook, just the flexibility to build the systems that you truly believe in. With ChartHop, you can really run your org your way. If their platform sounds like something that you want to learn more about, I highly recommend that you go request a demo. Just go to charthop.com and make sure to let them know that we sent you.
It's finally like warm and sunny in New York City. I had some very boring chores I had to do today to like post some documents to Australia, but it was so glorious out in the city. And I think there's a day which hasn't happened yet. I think it might be Saturday that happens every year in Manhattan where it's warm and sunny and every single person that lives here just goes feral. So I felt the tinglings of that today. It's on the horizon. Very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I remember those days. You come out of the subway and there are like people in bikinis because they're just like ready for the sun. Daniel?
Jesse, I feel like right before we got into the call, you were about to brag about something, and then we cut you off. Was that part of your good news?
This is actually not even an interesting thing. I wish I would have just said it before we did this, but I had multiple people today tell me that my background looks like a virtual background. They're like, wow, that background's amazing. Is that like really your house? And I was like, yes.
It is a pretty sick background. The first time I saw it, I was like, is she in a basement? Is this like her like woman cave? Like, what is this? Like, this is awesome. Like, I kind of want to get a tour of it, but yeah.
That's another podcast too. Podcast. That's the MPL Cribs podcast we're planning.
I was about to say Cribs. So many ideas.
It'll be the next MPL launch. Okay, what's my good news? So MPL Build is live. I know this episode won't go out for probably another 3 or 4 weeks, but yeah, we got our first 5 posts out. I'm super excited about it, and I'm very eager for people to get in there and dig around and give us feedback. So if you're listening to this and you've checked out MPL Build and you like it, or maybe you don't like it, either way, tell us what we should be adding, because we're building this for you and we want to make sure that we're adding all of the right resources. So I'm very, very excited about this launch.
Woohoo.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Well, I just realized then when you said that the first 5 posts are live, I'm like, oh no, that means I have another 4 posts I need to write this weekend. I'm on it.
Yeah, we got this. And so one of the posts is about how to structure your team. And so I want to dig in there. It feels like people get pretty hung up when trying to implement PeopleOps as a product. Like the team structure always seems to confuse people, or like they're like, does it have to be this way? And so let's start there.
In my cohort, Daniel, I think this was one point in the conversations where I think everyone was like laser focused on like, what is the answer to this? Like, what is the secret formula? How do I nail this? So yeah, I think I'm excited about this conversation today, talking about team structure. And so where should we start, Jesse? Like, I think it's fair to say that like it's a big shift. The hard truths are that there are some skill set differences. There are some team organization differences, and it can feel a little confusing. Do you think those are fair statements just based on the work you've done with teams?
Yeah, absolutely. I also think just generally the word restructure is a really scary word for most people. And the idea that you have to like restructure your team to do this new thing, I think it's kind of almost a misnomer, really. And I guess we'll talk about that. Like, structure in this sense doesn't mean that you need to do like this wholesale org redesign of your people team necessarily. There's just some changes to how you work together.
So maybe let's start with like, tell us more about the squad approach. Like, where does it come from? Why did you name it? How did you get to the name squads? Like, how does it work in practice?
Yeah. Squads, it's not me. This again, like everyone listening to this that like has worked with the product team is gonna be like, this lady just reads product management blogs and then rips it off. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right. So I think Spotify probably is like the most famous, like kind of originator of like the language around squads, tribes, guilds. They've got like a whole thing. I don't go into that level of like detail. I just go to squads. I don't think we need all that, frankly, but maybe, I don't know. So that's where the language comes from. I think I'm not going to describe the whole product management side of it. I think if you're interested, like there's some really great blogs from Spotify around how they've set up squad strategies and guilds in product management and engineering. For various reasons, I think that whole infrastructure is like interesting. It's definitely inspiring, but I actually don't think it's necessarily fully applicable to PeopleOps as a product, at least not in the way that most of us will implement this, because we aren't like, there's a reason an analogy is an analogy, and it's not a perfect circle Venn diagram, right? Like there are things that are different. And I think the big thing that is different between HR and product management is, yes, we are building these products, but we are also the customer support team and the communications team and the marketing team. And that's just not true for product, right? They just create the product. So they have they have differences in how they need to structure. Okay, so with that said, squads. Squads are the idea that you come together in a group of people, usually around 6 people, to specifically focus on a problem or a part of a product. So there's different ways that squads could be kind of functionally set up, but you come around the idea of one product or one problem for a period of time. It might be 5 years. It might be 6 months. It might be one quarter. And that's one of the key things is like you kind of come together in like a skills agnostic way, or it's like, I guess, role agnostic way in people operations, but you've got complementary skills. So you're able to produce an outcome together as a group. So rather than just have 6 recruiters work on a project that is like interview training, you have maybe a recruiter, an L&D person, a people partner, an admin in your team, and a brought in learning designer that's a consultant for 3 months. And then you work together as a squad on a problem. So maybe our onboarding training doesn't have enough information about how to project manage projects, and we really need to build the infrastructure for that. So you come together on a problem statement. That's a very poorly worded problem statement, by the way. If my team came in with that, I'd be like so upset, but you understand where I'm going at.
Mm-hmm.
So a very clear problem statement, product area, and then you work together as a team. One person might take the role of like, okay, I'm going to product or project manage this. And they may be the recruiter. One person's like, I'm going to do the user research. One person says, I'm going to write all the comms. One person says, I'm going to do all of the analysis, and I'm going to make sure that we're making good decisions. Another person's like, I'm going to be the subject matter expert. I'm going to bring in the content for this, right? And then what you kind of do together as a team is you produce a solution to this problem, then you track the outcome of that solution as your PeopleOps work. So that second half of your role that we spoke about last week.
How do you decide which role each person should take on? Like, I'm just imagining a team going through this change. They form a squad around a specific problem. They bring in 5-6 people with different skill sets. How do you go about saying, like, you're going to be the project manager, I'm going to do user research? Is it usually just in line with the type of work they usually do, or how do you see that done?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair question. And this is actually one that I get a lot, is like, how do I figure out who does what in the team? Like, none of my team are user researchers. None of my team are analysts, whatever, right? So I think it's like lots of different ways you can do this. Just like you would kind of figure out any kind of skill spikes within your team. The way that I really like and I suggest is to do like kind of a spider diagram of each of your team and like kind of a few key areas that are really crucial for every squad. Like I think every squad pretty much needs to have someone that fills the role of operations, like data and analysis, user research, communications, and project leadership. And communications could also be like design, look and feel, like the experience part of things. And actually, sometimes they may change. Maybe there's a different project that you need like analysis and subject matter expertise on. And like you can look at those things, like add subject matter expertise into that. And you've got 6 on your spider diagram, whatever it may be. But you take like a spider diagram and you ask everyone to fill in their spikes. Like, well, I'm really good at data analysis comparative to like the rest of the team and maybe people usually working in this field, but I'm really terrible at comms. Like that's actually the truth for me. Like I'm a really bad comms person, which is maybe surprising since I've written a book, but anyway, that's a whole separate conversation. So I would be like, I really don't index high on comms. Like I'd have someone else in the team probably step in to do that, but I'm pretty good at like forecasting, building a model, those kinds of things. So I would say, that's my spike. I'm good at these other things. And you kind of come together in a team where you have complementary spider diagrams that you can work together on. Now, that I think is just a really easy out of the box way to have a go, first crack. And what you usually will find out the first time your team starts working on this is like whether or not that was a true reflection. And you can move people around. Like I said, squads are flexible. You can say, actually, you know what? You were really good at user research, but your analysis probably wasn't as strong as we thought it was going to be. So let's like put you into a squad with someone else that's really good at analysis, and you can work on the user research piece, and then we'll move that someone else across so that you've got a person next to you if you really want to learn that, kind of help your team kind of develop in those ways. But also you could just do something where you say, like, I'm just going to make a decision and give you all a role and see how we go and teach you what you need to teach. Or you could ask the team to elect themselves, or you could bring in someone from your business that does user research, for example, and say, I need you to help our team 20%. I don't have anyone on my team that can do this, and everyone's going to be working on project management and something else. Like, there's multiple ways you can solve that problem. I think it's just about trying to figure out, like, how do you get to a point where you feel confident about what you do have in your team, what you don't have in your team, as quickly as you can, like that learning and iterative flow. And then how do I upskill my team or hire into my team places where we just don't have that?
And so just to kind of cover some of the ground that we've been over, the squads are typically smaller teams. Like in my head, I think like the Bezos principle, like we should all be able to eat a pizza together. Yeah. And these are ideally, well, sometimes it's just who we have, but ideally it's a diverse group of people with different contributions. We go through an analysis to identify what we are each strong at. We try to align that with the roles that we need to fill in the squad. Or if we're not that, if we're not ready or we're not that sophisticated, maybe we just vote on, what interests us the most. And we give it a go. We see how the first and is a squad aligned around a single initiative, or like how does that work? Like the scope of what we're talking. I'm guessing if we're new to this methodology, we're probably trying to not bite off more than we can chew. So we're taking on like one or two of the most impactful things. Like how does that? How do I look at that? Like the portfolio of our projects, we have a lot of shit we need to get done. Like how am I aligning the squad to like, around the work we need to do?
Yeah, this is a good question. I've actually done this a bunch of different ways, and I don't actually have like one. I'm very agnostic about which one you pick. I've picked whatever I think is right for the time that we're in as a company, and I've kind of chopped and changed as well. So you can do one which is around like funnel, which is actually something that product teams sometimes do. They're like, you've got like a activation, awareness, kind of brand product squad that's working on like your website, what happens when people landing pages, those kinds of things. And in that case, you would have your recruitment and onboarding squad that just focuses on like that first top of funnel for your people team, all the way through to like upselling and promotions. Like you've got maybe a product team that's focused just on growth. Like how do we drive product-led growth within our product? Well, in the kind of people team version, you might have a team that's just focused on like upselling promotions. I say upselling, it's like, that's what I consider to be like kind of product-led growth within your HR team, right? It's like every time you promote someone, you're kind of saying, it's kind of the equivalent deal as you do when someone buys a more expensive version of your product. You're saying like, we'll give you more, but we're kind of expecting more of each other, right? There's like this kind of increased buy-in. Anyway, that's, again, I'm going off piste. So it's like a funnel approach you could take. Another approach which I really like is like focusing on like specific parts of like the employee experience that aren't necessarily funnel orientated. So it's like, you could have one that's all about like engagement, learning, promotion, manager relationships, and one that's more about like difficult situations, challenges, policies, one that's about like efficiency, process design, that kind of stuff. There's another one you can do which is focused on like, we just every quarter pick a problem statement, and you don't get to say. We just say like, okay, we pick 5 problem statements and you just get one as a squad. And then the last one, which I do like, is each squad's focused on getting a metric, right? So like one of them is just focused on employee lifetime value to CAC payback, so like performance. One of them is just focused on internal net promotion retention rate, which is like how many people are we promoting and then retaining long term. And then what they do is they focus on problem statements that they think are limiting those metrics from being as good as they can. Yeah.
I think the one that we keep hearing on the podcast is moving from like a traditional like COE approach to, I think it was Crystal Boyson. She was the first person to bring this up in the pod, but she talked about like these cross-functional squads where there was like an end-to-end employee lifecycle ownership. And so I'm guessing that'd be the most similar to the funnel approach.
Yeah, you just break the funnel down and say like every single one of these squads gets a part of the funnel. And of course, like there are definitely people out there listening being like, I do not have a people team of 20 people. So like
That's what I was thinking.
that's
What about this
not a
the
thing.
like 3-person team?
Yeah. Well, and I guess a question on like the 3-person team or 5-person team. So let's say you have a squad of 6 people or 6 people on the team that are all trying to solve for one specific problem, but they also have their day job as like, you know, a recruiter
The
or
HumanOps,
yeah. What does that look like with the division of like the squad work? And let's say like you're a recruiter but you've been tasked as being like the data person. How are you splitting that work?
Okay, just a few things in this. I think the first thing you asked was, what do you do if you've got 1-person team? Like you're like a 1-squad team or like a half a squad team. And I think that's the version where you do either really it's the third one that I described. I think it was the third, which is like, what is the problem statements that we need to solve this quarter, and just focus on like you're just doing like what is the most urgent, important, classic Eisenhower matrix. Let's focus on that problem and crush it. You don't have a team that can be like moving a lot, like, you know, stuck to a certain part of the funnel. You need to be moving around the funnel, like putting out the fires as they happen. So, and that's like honestly the approach I think that you should take as a team, like collaboratively get together and figure out which problem statement you have. And then, to be honest, that's almost what you do anyway inside the funnel version, right? We get to inside the funnel version, the onboarding squad does basically the same thing, where they're like, let's look at all the onboarding, let's look at all the recruitment, onboarding, probation process, and see where the fire is, and then do the Eisenhower matrix and pick the most important problem. So it's just kind of a less structured version of that, because you have less team that you need to structure. So there's that. And the second thing you asked about is, how does it practically work with HumanOps? Okay, so let me maybe give an example. So actually at the moment I'm making some changes to our squad structure, and I'm introducing basically a version of this, like kind of the metrics one, right? So I'm moving into like this, I've got more than 2 squads, but there's a kind of like a squad that I'm adding people to and splitting them out. And they have been focused pretty much together on like more of a funnel approach, and more like kind of like operate, because I think it's one thing that's worth flagging here is my role is going to be a little different than if you're VP people or VP HR, because I also have ops and finance and everyone else. And I bundle everyone in actually into like a big ops squad. Now finance is in their own squad. They don't interact operationally with the other squads, but actually ops, people, recruitment, they all work together as if they're one team. But anyway, I digress. So I've got this new kind of structure I'm bringing in, where we had one squad that was working all on like the recruitment side of things, like funnel, right? So they're doing acquisition. But they were also kind of doing internal talent promotion progression, but there was some things that weren't working. We were missing some key metrics recently, and like some things that are changing. So I was like, okay, let's split this out. How I want to do it is we're now focusing on immediate needs and future proofing ourselves, right? So it's kind of the way to think about it. Now, I'm not going to get into detail of like the metrics we're focused on, all those kinds of things. Like I don't think it's super necessary right now, but the point is, the way that we've split that out is the team will then pick like, what's the thing they need to work on within those 2 squads? What's the biggest challenge? They're still recruiting through that process, but they're also improving the process that's stopping them from hitting the metric I've given them, or that's like hurting their ability to do it. So you'll have a recruiter, a people person. So maybe one of the problems maybe in 6 months' time, we notice that the recruitment team, like problem statement, the recruitment team has a gigantic backlog because our attrition rate is so poor that people arrive in the business, and before we even have a chance to replace them, there's a new person that we need to replace. Let's just say. So it's not true at all, but let's put it out there. Well, then that problem statement actually kind of needs a people person and a recruiter together, at least, to figure that out. So those people would work together to be like, okay, well, how do we solve this attrition issue? Is it that we implement a new interview process? Is it that the interview process is not hiring good people? Or is it that there's like bad training and we need to do better training? Is it that people are not feeling there's a sense of growth and purpose in the company? Like, let's figure out what the problem is through user research. Meanwhile, they're still doing their job, but they're just trying to solve that thing that's going to cause them more work anyway. I feel like that's the most convoluted, worst description or something, but hopefully it's helpful.
I think in a previous conversation, you mentioned how like you can also there's like a rule of thumb, like there's like a 60-40 split, generally speaking, there should be, if you have a healthy people ops as a product team. And I can't remember, it's like 60%, like the human operations are 40%. It might be vice versa, but am I remembering that correctly? Okay.
That's right.
So we keep coming back to the Annie Dean episode, and that's for a reason. Atlassian has mastered the art of running a distributed team, and Annie shared something that really stuck from their internal data. Daily office visits don't drive team connection, but 3 to 5 days of intentional togetherness, that does. They found that bringing teams together a few times a year led to a 37% increase in team connection, and that boost lasted about 4 or 5 months. So just let that sink in. It's not constant office time. It's not more Zooms. It's just one well-planned offsite every few months. That in-person time really matters. Not daily, but deliberate. Retreats, offsites, onsites, sales kickoffs. These are the moments that fuel culture, creativity, and collaboration. The problem that we see? Corporate group travel is extremely painful to plan, and it's one of the biggest line items on your budget. And so that's where Marco comes in. They make corporate group stay as easy as booking a personal hotel room. Think Airbnb, but for groups of up to 500 people. One, they're going to negotiate on your behalf, so you'll get 20 to 30% cheaper prices on hotels. Two, the properties are handpicked for corporate group travel, so you're going to have the right mix of meeting spaces, communal areas, on-site dining options, and other group-focused amenities. Lastly, their AI-powered search makes it really easy for you to find that perfect hotel based on group size, city, vibe, whatever it is that you're looking for. And honestly, when Suman, Marco's co-founder, walked us through how it works, we were blown away by how simple it is to book group travel with them. Something that's been historically very manual and kind of complex. So if you're planning your next team offsite, leadership retreat, or full company gathering, I highly recommend you go check out Marco. There are no contracts, no signups, and it's 100% free. Go check them out at mpl.marcoexperiences.com. That's mpl.marcoexperiences.com.
But you have to remember, like, the things that these teams are working on is stuff that should ostensibly help them do a better job with their HumanOps, right? Yep. Like, if you just let those problems run wild, like give the attrition example I just gave you, like the only thing that's going to happen is the recruitment team and the people team are just continuously run off their feet anyway. So you have to make space to be like, how do we solve that problem somewhere? Otherwise, what you end up doing is being like, let's hire 6 more recruiters, let's hire 6 more HR people. And then what do you do then? Then a new problem arrives. And then you have to hire more and more and more. And you become this very bloated team that's unable to solve the problems that are holding them back, but requires more and more headcount in order to deliver their basic work.
And that should be understood because as a team, we will have defined a mission for what we are trying to accomplish as a people team. And knowing that this is what we're signing up for. This is a model that we believe in. And so this is all starting to feel more doable. Like I'm starting to feel like if I'm a listener or a practitioner, I'm like, okay. So they're like, these are smaller teams. There's cross-functional representation within HR. Sometimes, we can look externally if it makes sense. And there are other resources from other teams that can help. There are a variety of different ways that we can prioritize or identify like the key thing or things that we're working on. And there are ways of doing it that could be for a team of one or a team of few or larger people teams. And so we have now assigned our squad and we're doing squad work. We're working in sprints, which is probably, I think in a recent conversation with Brian at Ancestry, like they're all in on PeopleOps as a product, but I think he mentioned we're not quite working in sprints. I may have that maybe that was Shane. I could be.
No, I think it was Shane. Yeah, it was Shane.
It was Shane.
And I think their process, I think they have their HR business partners. They may have renamed that title, but they're essentially like out in the business doing the research, and they have this.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he called the backlog, but maybe it was like the now and not yet list or something. That's sort of how they're prioritizing their work. But he said they haven't moved to the sprint planning process yet.
So we may be
I think
working.
We talked about this last week, right?
We probably did, honestly.
Yeah, I think we did. We talked about how I do the sprint breakdown at the beginning of each quarter, and yeah, how to
That's right.
start putting your toe into it. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, totally.
and so maybe we're working in sprints, maybe we're not working in sprints, there's we can still move
That's fine.
forward, you know,
Yeah.
in this squad structure. And so how do we start to measure progress? Like, okay, now we're 3 months in, how do we track along the way? How do
Hmm.
people report? Like, who does the squad report to? Like, where does ultimate accountability sit?
Yeah. So the way that I do it is every squad has a squad lead that's leading on the problem statement that they're working on that quarter. And that person will usually be the one that, again, has the kind of subject matter expertise within that spike that can kind of be the subject matter expert to help lead the team in the right direction, right? So that I don't have to be like constantly coming in and being like, no, that's not the best way to affect our time to hire or whatever it is. And then those people, I mean, the thing is, like, the VP people, the CHRO still remains ultimately accountable. And like the reporting structure in terms of managerial responsibilities remains exactly the same. I actually make no suggestions at all that your managerial structure changes.
Mm.
Of course, if you want to, and say the way that we manage our squads is we actually have full-time permanent squad leads, and those squad leads also manage their team. Maybe, but one of the reasons I don't super love that is because you want your squads to be kind of cross-functional within your HR team. So you want a recruiter and a people partner and a business partner and an analyst maybe all working together. And I find that actually that's not the best way to have like a project manager be a people manager for people from all these different functions. So you're like a hierarchy and your like org design that you have on Bob or Bamboo or whatever it is you're using should be exactly the same as it probably currently is. The only difference is your working style. When you're delivering on your product, everyone in that squad reports on how they're doing to their squad lead. And then the squad lead reports to the CHRO VP about how the overall accountability for those projects is going.
It's exactly how my wife's team is structured. So she's the team lead for the machine learning Navi team. And
Oh, that sounds
yeah. And so like
Tori's a badass. Tori's a complete badass.
and so
sick.
she's the team lead, but she's not managing anybody. So she has a manager who is managing people that are all on different teams, but they're all within the machine learning team, and all of them work on like different squads. And so as you were describing it, I was like, oh, like I'm very familiar with that model, and that's
How
how
does she like it?
she loves it. Yeah, because as
Shout
the
out Tori.
team lead, as a team lead that hasn't yet been promoted to a manager, it's given her more leadership responsibilities. Yeah, so like she's having all the team leads have I don't know if it's a weekly meeting or a bi-weekly meeting, but they're doing retros, they're reporting into, I guess I don't know the title of this person. I guess like the director level person in charge of the machine learning team
Yeah,
on like a biweekly basis. And so yeah, she's loved it. Definitely allows her to flex more of like those manager muscles, even though she's not
we love a
managing
good
anybody.
flex on the
Yeah,
pod. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
You know, I was gonna say, because I just through the podcast, like, and Daniel,
Mm.
like Daniel, we're co-founders, we're cousins, we're like brothers, and so what does that look like? What does your career progression look like, though, working in these squads? Because I could see that being some people loving that. Like, quite honestly, that sounds like an awesome job, not having to be a manager and just being able to be, but having leadership responsibilities like that. That sounds appealing to me, but I could see it not being appealing to all. And that, there's a team of people involved. So yeah, like what does career progression look like?
Yeah. I this is actually my favorite thing about working in squads is like basically what Daniel just described is like so okay, I'm when I worked at Whereby, we did this as our team structure, but also just across the team, like our whole company works in this like way, right? We were extremely focused on like squads, problem statements, solving things together. The thing I really loved about this is we got to make a career progression framework where we didn't just have the traditional you're an IC really good at your technical expertise. So you're an IC comp and reward person, or you're an IC machine learning engineer. And the only way to progress is either that, or you progress, you become more and more technically apt and more senior. You become a staff engineer one day or like whatever, or you become a manager and you become, team lead and then whatever. We actually created a third way that you can progress, which is called Entrepreneurial, which is someone that's really, really good at managing projects and ideas. So you don't need to manage a person ever in your whole career, but you could be a lead project manager, a lead product manager of a different department, where actually what you are really good at is taking a problem statement, rallying a team around it, and delivering on that problem statement. So you're opening up a type of career progression that doesn't otherwise really exist, that actually a lot of people are really interested in. And so, okay, confession, and I feel bad saying this. I said this at the office a couple of weeks ago, and my whole team was mortified. I think it's kind of the equivalent of saying, like, I never wanted kids to your own kids, but I actually hate being a manager. Like, I really don't like management. Shout out. I love
that.
my team, and they're a dream to manage. So that's great. But, like, it's not my favorite part of my job. I think hate's a strong word. I really love managing projects. I really love like being kind of broadly visible to a group of people and helping align them on things and setting briefs and giving them ways to deal with problems. But in terms of like sitting down and having one-to-ones, working through like, career development problems and delegation, it's not the work that fills my cup personally, right? But there is also just a certain point, like I think once you're in the C-suite, you kind of have to be a manager. I don't have a huge amount of direct reports for that very reason. And instead, I have people in my team that love manage people. Like that is the thing they want to do. And then I can basically like have other members of my team that want to lead squads and lead products and ideas so that everyone's doing something that gives them a sense of progression and momentum without feeling like, oh, the only thing I can do to become, 3 levels higher is manage a team of 4 people when it actually like doesn't fill me up.
I'm glad we're covering this. Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, no, I think you briefly touched on it, like your role as I know you're the COO, so it's a little bit different, but as the people leader, are you almost like that chief product officer for the HR team, and what does that look like? So let's say you have 4 squad leads or 3 squad leads. What does that cadence look like with them? And how are you managing your time as the CPO?
Yeah. So again, yeah, it's like slightly different. I'm just going to do it just as like, should I do it like an analogy, like what another company would look like, or just talk about directly with me? I just feel like my version is like kind of slightly unhelpful, but it is nice to hear what practically people are doing.
Maybe give an example from somebody that's gone through a cohort.
Okay. So yeah, so I think the way you think about it is like you understand the vision of what your entire employee life cycle to look like. I was like, wow, I'm going to go like really. Let me think about this is not someone from the cohort, but I think I've had a few conversations with Melanie from Dropbox and her team, and I think this is really
Melanie.
interesting. Shout out
guest.
Melanie!
Yeah.
What a freaking angel that lady is.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
I quoted her episode. I swear for like a year straight. I was like, "You need to listen to the Melanie Wasser episode."
So sweet, so enthusiastic, so earnest, so smart. Anyway, this is not the Melanie. That's a separate podcast.
That is. That's
after
a different
the Arsenal podcast and the MPL Cribs podcast. There's also the Melanie Fan Club podcast. No, but she has like a very distinct point of view about what she wants Dropbox's culture and employee experience to look like. They're very passionate about this idea of remote first and distributed team and working from anywhere. They have a very clear point of view in the marketplace that's driven by her, right? She's the one that's driving like, this is who I want Dropbox to be in the market. Of course, she's working with the rest of the exec team. And then she's leading each of those squads and their problem statements to drive them closer to that market position that she wants them to be. So they kind of unified, right? And that's kind of the perfect example of what your VP People / CHRO should be doing. Like, what you want to avoid is what can happen in siloed teams anyway, because squads are still to some degree silos. They're working at like much more cross-functionally, much more collaboratively. So you're kind of breaking those walls down. But what you don't want is one team over in employee experience working on, we're going to do a remote first strategy. We're going to be starting to think about asynchronous working. We're going to unblock this problem statement. And then over here in a different squad, we're going to facilitate people having on-site conversations about performance every quarter. It's like, well, wait a second, that's not aligned to the overall vision and mission of like what we want this collective to look like. So that's really the work of the VP and CHRO, is to bring these squads together to understand like who are we trying to be in the marketplace as we work together and solve problems. Like, what is the overriding mission and vision?
Love it. I mean, earlier before we just covered this most recent topic, I was saying I'm so glad. I think these are the nuances, going back to my point earlier on the cohort that I was in, these are the nuances that I think trip people up. And especially when this approach is still in its infancy and you're getting a lot of questions from everyone and you're really trying to put your best foot forward and you're like, well, shit, I don't know. And so I think this is super helpful. I want to talk about the team member persona or perspective. So for the team members that have never worked this way, like I don't want to, like the junior mid-level team members that may be new to this, what are there things that get them tripped up, or what suggestions do you have, I guess, for people listening for helping to coach the team members that might not be totally bought into this yet or feel like it's super confusing to them?
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm going to be honest, it's a big deviation from the way that a lot of people see their career in HR. And I've definitely seen people be scared of like, oh, if I start doing this, is it going to prohibit me from the future of like, what's my career progression going to look like at companies that don't operate this way if I tell them that I've been doing user research for 6 months? And I think the important thing to say is like, well, you're still doing people work. You're still creating products. You're still creating, like, solving problems. Hopefully what you're doing is just doing it more efficiently, more effectively, and having better visibility across your company, being more commercial. That's the first thing. Is I really don't see this as being something that's going to limit your career in the future, at least not in any business that's progressive and interested in solving problems effectively. But I do think it's this kind of scary stretch, right? If you're let's say like a junior people partner, you've just left a coordination role or maybe a HR admin role, and you've just got into your first HR VP role. Well, now you're being asked not just to do the work that you're excited about, that you learned about in your like SHRM course, your CIPD course. You're not just like, facilitating difficult conversations. Now you're also being asked to go out and do data analysis. Like, gosh, that's scary. I didn't sign up for this. But I think like there's a couple of things. It's like, first of all, like that's why you should be focusing on the spike. What's the thing that you're really good at that you want to learn about? But also remember, like we kind of as people have to be future-proofing ourselves in our roles right now. Like I think we talked about this last week or maybe the week before, but we're in a crazy volatile time about how AI can help support and change the roles that we're in across everything. And I think this is an awesome moment for you to really lean in and say like, okay, well, what are the skills that are going to be really, really valuable as companies continue to progress, and look for opportunities to do that.
Sorry, I was just watching Steven comment in the outline on how that was fire, and it was fire.
There's a lot of emojis going on, which is really
a lot of
fun.
Emojis.
Whew, thank you. Appreciate the emojis.
Let's say you're I'm gonna pick on like a bigger company.
Yeah.
You have 5,000 employees. CPO comes in and they want to implement this new squad approach. Like what challenges might pop up in that situation? One of the moments that's always stuck with me was something that Darren Murph, the former head of remote at GitLab, said. And this is from an OG episode. He said, "We've decoupled business results from place, but the next big unlock is decoupling business results from time." He called this time independence. And to get there, teams need to completely rethink how work happens. And so when I was reading through Atlassian's new report, The State of Teams 2025, that's all I could think about. That's the quote that kept coming to mind. They surveyed 200 Fortune 1000 execs and 12,000 knowledge workers to understand what the highest performing teams are doing differently. Spoiler alert, it's not about more meetings, more tools, or forcing everyone into one way of working. It's about putting a system into place, one that helps teams align on goals, plan together, and actually use their collective knowledge so that AI can help instead of overwhelming teams. This report is completely ungated, no email walls, no forms. So if you want to take a look, just click the link in the show notes and you'll get access to the full PDF.
Oh, what a good question. I think you're going to have a couple things. I think first, your first challenge is going to be organizational awareness of this. Like, people have a very specific way about how they expect people teams to run. And I don't mean, sorry, I mean companies, like the people outside the people team. And those expectations will be significantly disrupted by this methodology. And not always not in negative ways necessarily. They'll be disrupted in positive ways too. Hopefully they're like, wow, the people team's like producing a lot of stuff now, and they've been really communicative with me, and I feel like I'm really involved in the decision-making processes, that's good stuff. But it may be also, wow, this thing is an MVP. We're used to them going away for a year and producing this like very glossy piece of work. How do I interact with an MVP of something? Like, it's iterative now. I've like, this negative feedback about their work all of a sudden. So you need to make sure that the organization understands this is the new approach we're taking, which involves you. You're part of the co-creation process. We're going to take your feedback on board. We're going to be much more transparent about the feedback and what we're doing with it. But also, you're going to see some work that's like half-baked sometimes. It's going to be like good enough that you're going to get what you need out of it. Minimum lovable is what we aim for. But you may find it a little clunky or MVP, right? The integration may not work yet. Or we're just sending out a test to 50 people, not 150 people or 1,000 people. So that's the first thing. I think the next thing you're going to start seeing a challenge of is like, obviously, your own team, right? The bigger your company is, the bigger your people team is going to be. And that team, you really have to take them through like this. Stephen, I think your point was right before. This is complex. There's a lot of information to share with people. You probably have people in your team that are very scared by this idea. You probably have people in your team that just are organizational change resistant, which is what happens, that maybe have seen other CHROs or CPOs or VP people come in and say, we're going to change everything up. And then they've seen it fail and they're like, seen this before. So yeah, like, I think there's a whole section in my book about how to work through organizational resistance and organizational change. And there's obviously like a trillion incredible books about managing organizational change, but that's going to be a huge part of it within your people team. And then the last thing is, it's literally just the practical skills, right? Like, you're asking people to work on skills and like figure out a skills matrix of a lot bigger surface area than if you've got a team of 15 people. You're going to have to put people into squads cross-functionally that maybe have never worked together in new ways. And you're going to have to figure out like, how does this all work? You might need help doing that. It might be a good thing to get someone to come in and help facilitate that like redesign of the work in your squads. And then just things like user research. You're going to have to get maybe a member of your user research team to train your people team on what that actually means and how it works. Things like data analysis, like AI has taken us a million miles away further into the future on doing AI and data analysis now. But that there's still a lot of things that you're going to have to really like teach your team that maybe they've never really had to do independently before. And then with the pressure of organizational change and the pressure of the entire company looking at you launching MVPs, that's a lot of stuff you need to make sure that you're giving a lot of grace for, giving more time than you've planned for projects, like giving people room to make mistakes and have to try things again. But hopefully what you start seeing is like this kind of gradual move towards a place where people are really feeling like this is actually aim for wins, quick wins.
And I have to imagine that a thoughtful, intentional, larger organization would understand, would have some organizational awareness about themselves to know like, oh yeah, we can't just go from A to Z here. Like, maybe we pilot this, in a pocket of HR, and because and we see how it goes, and we take those learnings and we expand and expand and expand. Is that a reasonable way of doing it?
Completely. I actually think it's a really, really good way to do it, is setting up your one squad with like innovators that you have like I call it like a positive halo. People that when they're on board with something, everyone else around them becomes on board with something. Like, they're the people that like walk into
everyone else is like, I want to be a part of a squad.
Yeah, what's that?
How do I get in on that?
So if you can find those people that are part of that like innovative, like positive, they have that positive halo, and you take them and say, okay, I'm really interested in doing this. We want to do a pilot. We've got 2 really interesting problem statements. Which one gets you fired up? I want to put you guys together for 3 months to focus on this problem statement with these resources, and this is what my roles in it's going to be. Let's see how we go, right? Let's see what we learn. Like, that is the most product thing you can do, is start with an iterative test and get the feedback and see how it goes and roll it out.
And I think, I mean, that would be if I were, and I grew up in HR at big companies, that would be my way of doing this, because we used to have a joke like, oh yeah, anytime there was a new HR transformation or initiative, we're like, yeah, just wait 3 years. Nothing will have really changed. And we'll move on to the next branded transformation that we have to go through. And I say that in jest, but I think there are organizations out there, like I'm sure there are listeners hearing this being like, oh yeah, I know those organizations. And so doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting different result, like that's the definition of insanity. And I think this pilot approach, embodies, the kind of agile mindset, the minimal lovable approach that you were talking about earlier. And so I guess I'll leave it at that, because I know we're nearing the end of these conversations. Man, I just have to say, I hope you guys are enjoying these conversations, because I love this. And I hope
it's like our old riff sessions, but even better.
Yeah, it's so much better.
Sorry, I was just having a flashback. The first HR conference we went to together, Steven, I don't know if was that Transform or
Transform.
HR Tech?
I think it was Transform.
So we were at Transform, and we were at a happy hour, and this woman recognized us, and she was like, oh, y'all are the Modern People Leader guys. And this is like early days. So we were like, oh, cool. Like somebody recognizes us.
Fame.
But then she loosened up, and eventually she was like, just one piece of feedback for the sessions you do with just you and Steven. It'd be good if you found a third person, and if it was a woman that's actually like worked in HR. And so,
oh my God, shout out to that lady.
And I was like, you're not wrong. And so I don't know. I just feel like this is like the perfect dynamic.
Here we are. Whoever that was, we have actioned your feedback. So thank you.
If it's you, DM me on LinkedIn. I just send you a gift. Love that.
Oh my goodness. So I think we can do we have time for a couple of final questions, or is it time is this the right spot to bring it to
I feel like we're ending on a high note. We should just go to one word or phrase close. Okay. And I'm not even going to give Jessica the chance to steal my one word or phrase. And I'm going to go with #squad.
Ooh, nice.
You know what's so funny? Okay, so we talk about this Google Doc. I feel like this has been a multi-thread thing that's gone on for multiple. This week in the Google Doc, I literally wrote whatever Daniel was going to say as my one word. And I've been waiting this whole time, and I wasn't going to steal it, don't worry. My word is flex. I really like that we talked about like flexing certain muscles, flexing your team. I think there's something really fun about the idea of like, I think that the products, my favorite thing about this is like there's so much more flexibility. Your team has flexibility in terms of their career direction. They have flexibility in terms of which types of things they work on. They have flexibility in terms of the skills they are trying to improve. You have flexibility on which problems you have your team solving. Like, it's a very adaptive, agile, gross. I kind of hate that word. But yeah, so it's a very adaptive, flexible way to think about things. So that's my word.
I love that. I have a couple of entries today. First, my one word close is future, because I do think like this is the future. Like I've got to be honest. Like when I was going through the cohort, I was thinking of all the reasons why this won't work. And all these years later, all the conversations I've had, Jesse, we've talked about these things before. Like I am bought in. Like there is a way around all of the major challenges, albeit it might not be perfect, but there is a way to do this. And so the deeper we get into these conversations, the stronger I feel that this is the future for HR. And my bonus is, come on, you Spurs, let's go.
Oh
we did it. That's all I got.
That's all I got. We love that.
And on that note, great talking to you guys.
Love
talk
listening to
soon.
you.
All right.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Modern People Leader. We really, really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to us. And connect with us on LinkedIn. We want to know what you think about the show, and you can find links to both of our profiles in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and see you on the next episode.